Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the great state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Good morning and welcome to this Thursday edition of the Michael Dukes Show, all about schools today. And we got a lot of stuff going on to discuss, and great guests and more. Joining us this morning, I see both I see David's a little early. David Boyle is going to be joining us at 7, although maybe he'll pipe in here. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a tete-a-tete back and forth between Melissa Burnett, the Fairbanks School Board president, and David Boyle, education advocate and friend of the show, talking about, lots of big issues. This is going to be one of the biggest things that we're going to see in the upcoming session, folks, is this discussion on school funding. And of course, every school district, it was just reported last night that the KPB, the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District, has probably a $17 million deficit. The Fairbanks North Star Borough's got a $16 million deficit. The Anchorage one is probably triple of both of that. I don't even know at this point, but it's going to be a lot. And it raises a lot of questions. And of course, they start talking about closing schools and doing everything else. Well, Melissa is the brand spanking new, they haven't taken the wrapper off yet, I think, brand spanking new school board president. And she has been kind of overseeing this. She's talked with us about school closures and stuff before, but now she had a quote in yesterday's KTUU article talking about it. So I asked her to come on board and talk a little bit about it. Let's have her join us here this morning to get some details. Melissa Burnett, school board president from the Fairbanks North Star Borough. Hello there, lady. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Good morning, Michael. Good morning, friends.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for coming on board. All right. So first of all, let's talk about this in general terms across the state. As I just mentioned, KPB's got, they've got a deficit. Fairbanks has got a deficit. I'm sure Anchorage will have a deficit. It seems like almost every district, I don't know about the Matsu, but almost every district has got some kind of deficit, which leads to the question of, is this systematic, or is what's going on here that every school district is running a deficit? And is the culprit state funding, or is the culprit the fact that we have a declining population and a declining enrollment and had a continual declining enrollment?
Those are great questions. So it's all of the above. It's everything and anything. Enrollment is a huge factor right now with the deficits. This is absolutely structural. This is something that we are in our 7th year now of multi-million-dollar deficits, and our enrollment declines. If you look all the way back to 2002, we had 15,000 some students. We are now sitting under 12,000. We're sitting at like 11,600-700, somewhere around there. This year alone, we saw a 650 student decrease in our district. So it's enrollment, it's structural deficits, it's all of the above.
Well, I mean, and that's, I guess this is part of my question, and I'm not, obviously I don't want to beat up on you on this, but if we know that we've had structural deficits for 7 years, and we know that the trend and the projected trend for enrollment is to continue to decline, and like you said, losing 15% enrollment in a single year, you start compounding that over 3 or 4 years, and all of a sudden we've got a real problem, right?
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, why aren't we taking why isn't there a more strident attack on this deficit and the fact that we're about to lose? I mean, this is almost like time is crisis. I mean, we can throw money at it, but the problem is as fewer students, it's going to be a problem whether we throw money at it or not. Even in the short term, with fewer students, we need less overhead. We need fewer, teachers, janitors, guidance counselors. That's just the way it is. We'd like to be able to spin it back up in the future if the trend reverses and we get more students, but we know this is a problem, and we can't just keep pretending that more money is going to fix the issue at this point.
No, you're absolutely correct. This enrollment decline, Fairbanks has actually been talking about for a few years now. A couple years ago, the discussion was it's around 60 students a year. Then it went up to about 80 students a year. And we've really been having these questions on, okay, what does this look like? And then this year, that was huge. That was none of us expected that such a steep decline in student enrollment. I wouldn't say that it's a failure to recognize, but it's catching up with us very fast. And it's a lot of people would like to say it's because of homeschool and correspondence programs, but we can actually track the trends, and we're seeing, people want to talk a lot about that out migration, and it doesn't exist. Some people like to say that it absolutely does. People are leaving the state, and that's what we're seeing in our district.
Right. I mean, I know we just saw the news story that came out yesterday that said, well, people aren't leaving the state as much as we thought, well, regardless of whether people are leaving the state or not, the decline in enrollment is real.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's a real thing, and we can blame that on, COVID,
blame it on
whatever. Yeah. I mean, people are, the homeschooling enrollment, went up double digits, but the general brick and mortar school enrollment has been on a downward trend for 10 years, 12 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And so at some point we have to acknowledge that we just don't need the overhead. We just don't need the overhead because we don't have that number of students. I mean, Fairbanks is actually doing better than Anchorage, because in Anchorage, there were several schools that were below 50% capacity, and they were still leaving them open, and they weren't combining them and things like that. But there has to come a time where the efficiency of combining schools, it has to make sense, right?
Yeah, and that's where we are, and that's why you'll see this list of 5 schools now. And that's where we're at. We have to face the fact that our enrollment is on a decline. We no longer have the sustainability for the buildings with our student enrollment. We have lots of empty classrooms, lots of space that we're heating. And so it's time to look at the enrollment, look at what we have as a district, and start to consolidate that and bring these students in closer together so that we can offer more programs, more educational opportunities, more CTE, things that will actually benefit the students that they're not getting at these other places. And not that they're not great schools. All of our schools in our district are great schools. We have great teachers, great students. We have great educators, everything, we are at a point where the enrollment's on a decline, and we do have to face it. I see some of the comments, and this is our reckoning. And so we are consolidating, right sizing. I know people hate that word, the right sizing word, but that's what this is. We're consolidating and matching our enrollment to our buildings and getting rid of that extra.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have to consolidate, and I knew it as soon as I saw the announcement that you were going to, there's going to be a 5-school post, and I knew that people on Facebook and social medias would be, oh, my school and my children. And, and again, I think people have to stop looking at this with emotion and realize there's only a certain amount of money in the pot that we have available, and we've only got a certain amount of students, and we've got a certain amount of buildings, and we have to make those choices, and they have to be smart choices. But we shouldn't be so emotionally tied. And somebody said to me, oh, our mutual friend so-and-so, they bought a house because the school in their district was so great, and now it's on the chopping block. And I'm like, yeah, but that happens. That does happen. And it sucks sometimes because it may inconvenience you. Now you got to drive an extra 20 minutes out of your day, or, you've got to take him to another, but that's life. Right. And how do you, if you want to leave all this stuff open, who's going to pay for it? And that's the bigger question, because I think Fairbanks is, aren't you getting close to being maxed out on your local contribution to schools?
Yeah, we're not far from it. They don't take us to the cap, but we're very close. And if they do take us to the cap, that would be our boroughs in a very sensitive situation as well. And so that would, it would take us, if they funded us to the cap, it would put the borough in a situation as well. So it's, you're correct. There is a lot of emails coming forward, a lot of people, on Facebook. I do believe that there is room for some of the emotion. And that's why the board last year, we had some of this discussion. We began this discussion last year, and the community was like, please give us time. Please wait a minute. And so we did. But now here we are, and it's to a point where, okay, it is time to rip that Band-Aid off, match our resources to what we have student population wise and what we have funding wise, and try to, like, our accountability piece, right, is trying to fix this budget before we get to the legislators where they're trying to fix our budget, so we can say, hey, look at what we're doing. We're consolidating. We contracted custodial. We're, reducing administration. We're
Right.
reducing all of this. And yet here we still are with 6 mil after custodial, after these schools, we're still facing $6 million that we do have to find in this budget. So no matter what, we don't escape class size increases and these buildings, even if the legislature came through with this crazy number, which I know we'll get to, these schools still close.
Right. Well, because again, it makes sense. You
Yes.
have to be efficient with the money. You could have two schools open at 48% and capacity apiece, or you could have one school at 96% capacity, and you would be saving $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million a year by doing just that alone. I mean, that, it only makes sense. And somebody has got to face that kind of music, and it's time to address that. Melissa Burnett is our guest. She is the school board president at the Fairbanks North Star Borough. We're going to talk a little bit more about her comments here to KTUU, and also, as she mentioned, this potential, and we're seeing it already. We saw the opinion piece from Senator Loki Tobin, and others talking now about a nearly $2,000 BSA. Well, that's a lot. Let's just put it that way. That's a lot. We're going to talk about that here in a moment. Melissa Burnett, our guest. David Boyle's coming up here in just a bit. We'll continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We return to more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, look at that. Everybody went to break just like they were supposed to. Okay. Yay.
Hey, can I say, Michael, first off, before we get into more school discussions, first off, we in Fairbanks are so proud of you. Like, seriously, I am just so stoked for everything you're doing down there in Homer and these new stations that you kicked up. And this is just so cool. I'm so proud of you, friend.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's oof, man, it's a lot. There's a lot going on. There is a lot going on. So
yes, there is. I hear about it from Perry all the time. So
yeah,
I'm just proud of you.
I mean, I've got like 12 windows. I got 5 monitors and 12 windows up in each monitor. It's like 2 automation systems and the things. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot right now. I'm trying to get caught up here. Well, anyway, I appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I mean, and again, I don't want to, you have been one of the lone conservative voices on the school board for a while. And so I'm not trying to beat up on you, but like you said, the first thing that struck me was when you said, we've had 7 years of structural deficits.
Yeah.
At some point, somebody's got to go, we've been working on this structural deficit for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Maybe we should just start, cutting things. You know what I mean? You can't keep saying, well, we got a structural deficit, and so we'll just keep kicking the can down the road and hoping that somebody will bail us out every year. That's essentially what's going on, right?
Well, not in Fairbanks.
We'll get some money.
I want to correct that, though. That's not what's happening in Fairbanks, because we are making those cuts. We have been looking at this very seriously for many years. We're with these 5 schools. That's 9 schools in the last 4 or 5 years now. That's 9 schools that we will be closing. We have cut over 50, 60 positions district wide, between SPED, ELP, counselors. We have fired so many teachers. We have cut programs. We've cut hockey. We've taken our athletics fund all the way down to nothing. The school closures are huge. We've reduced admin 25% across the board in the last 7 years. We are making those cuts. It's just gotten to a point where with that enrollment decline, a reckoning is here, and it's
You're
more.
essentially because your cuts are coming, but also the decline is coming. You're essentially treading water, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Just keeping up with what's going on.
What I like to tell people who aren't in this, that they don't see the budget every single day, they're not in it. I like to reference it as the Titanic, right?
Right.
And this is Fairbanks. I understand there's other districts out there that whatever. For Fairbanks, I like to reference it as we are the Titanic, and we are treading water. We've got 2 of our watertight bunkheads that are full of water right now. The third is filling up. And if that third fills, we sink. And that's where the funding and the enrollment come in. And it's come to a point where that 650 loss, that was huge. I mean, we had to pull from fund balance to be able to come up and make up that difference. And
Right.
so it is a reckoning where the cuts we're making those moves, but the enrollment decline is just tripling almost. And so we've got to consolidate.
Right. Melissa Burnett is our guest, and we're talking with her about what's going on in the school districts and the enrollment and yada yada yada, and so much more. So let's continue on with her here in just a second. I know David Boyle is also down here in the chat room. Let me see if I can add David to the stage here. And David is he's only with us by audio. David, are you there? Are you with me, David? Okay. David is just hanging out there. All right. Well, we'll leave him hanging in the chat room. All right. We're going to be back. Here we go. We're going to continue the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We're returning to it right now. Let's get to it. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Yep. That's where we're at right now. All right. So we were just talking with Melissa Burnett, and we're just kind of going over everything. And I guess my biggest question was this comment in the KTUU. And I want to talk about BSA and all that kind of stuff, but the comment in the KTUU, it was you brought up some valid arguments, because 2 of the schools that are talking about being shut down in the Fairbanks area is the Salcha School and the Two Rivers School. Now, these 2 schools are, way out in the boondocks, right? Salcha especially, and it serves people who live 70 miles out of town, 65, 70 miles out of town, Harding Lake, Birch Lake, Salcha, all those areas. And and if you had to drive all those people into town, it would be a thing, right? It'd be a long bus ride, et cetera, et cetera. So especially since Salcha was, I think, at 72% capacity or something like that. My question is, why even suggest a school like that where you are already having transportation issues, right? In Fairbanks, you guys are already having issues with transportation. Why would you do that? And and just exacerbate the problem. What's going on with that? And then the final thing that you said, so you brought that up, and that was good. But the other part was, you're quoted at the end of the article about saying, if this is it, there's no more closures. This is absolutely it. And I'm looking at it going, well, if we have another 15% decline in enrollment next year, or 7%, or what, how can you guarantee that? How can you guarantee that this is it? I mean, that's a big question. So let's address those. You take it in whatever order you want to take it at that point.
Yeah. So first, I want to address the comments with the with the KTUU, and take a second to correct it. I shouldn't have said absolutely, because that is very definitive, and I didn't mean it so definitively. But with these 5 schools, we're taking our student population to our school population will be a lot of these schools in that 90% range. So we're already getting to a pretty full capacity in these schools. And so my comment was based around the same comments that's coming from administration, that we don't have the space for more consolidation after this. Now, I obviously, if the funding doesn't come through, if we have a massive steep decline in enrollment again, there would be room for that. But we are trying to get to a place where we don't have to do this again. And that is what we are trying to put forward, is that this should be it. This should be where we stop when it comes to closing our district buildings. So just to take a second to correct that definitive statement. I shouldn't have been so definitive in that, but that is what we are discussing, is that this should be it. There shouldn't be more school closures after this, but of course, we face another 18, 19, $20 million, or if another steep decrease in enrollment, of course that would be possible. Now, when it comes to Salcha and Two Rivers, the board as a whole, we have a lot of concerns. Yeah, those schools, Two Rivers is like, I don't know, 6 more miles past the lodge or something like that. I mean, it's another 15 minutes past going to the lodge in Two Rivers.
Right.
And Salcha, I mean, if you've ever made that drive, you go past Eielson, you get to Salcha, you go past the boondocks, you do all those windy turns, and it's far out there. And then you have families that are out at Harding, as you said, Birch Lake. So that brings into the question of, how are we going to transport them? And what does that look like? And that will be a conversation we get into this Monday at our work session.
Right.
The administration will bring forward what that looks like, what the times are, how this works out, how getting them onto Eielson also works, because the plan would be to transport Salcha to Anderson there on Eielson Air Force Base. And so what that looks like, we don't have those answers just yet, but that is coming on Monday. And so I look forward to sitting down and asking those questions, seeing what this will look like for those students. I know Two Rivers, they would transport to Weller.
Right.
And that's a concern as well. My biggest concern is with Salcha. That's huge. People are saying the lodge, that's the Two Rivers Lodge. I'm sorry, I know a lot of you are not from the Fairbanks area.
Yeah. Two Rivers Lodge is like 37 miles out on Chino Springs Road. So it's a trip. If you had to go to Weller, it's basically an hour trip in a school bus one way. So the kids would be spending 2 hours a day on the bus. And, out in Salcha, like I said, I mean, how far do you have to come into town? I mean, is it going to North Pole? Is that where would they be going, is to North Pole, or
it would be Anderson for those students. They would go to Anderson. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, and where's Anderson? Anderson's in
Eielson.
On Eielson. Okay. So they'd have to go to Eielson Air Force Base. So that's still probably a 30-minute, 45-minute trip. So, yeah, I mean, I sometimes wonder, I saw this with the Anchorage School District more than with the Fairbanks School District, but sometimes you go, why would you cut, this school when it's a school of excellence, or, whatever. There was, things that were discovered later on about some of these schools in Anchorage that they tried to cut, and people were like, well, wait a second, and sometimes I wonder if it's punitive just to get people's attention or to raise awareness or whatever else. But it doesn't seem like that. This right here is, why would you cut a school that serves a community where you're already having transportation issues, which again leads me to the transportation issue question of, what are you guys doing about that? What's the fix? I know you guys have had some struggles with the local contractor not being able to get enough people, not being able to. I mean, you guys closed school one day because the bus drivers they didn't have enough drivers to take the kids everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and let's address the Salcha thing again, just real quick with the why close it. That also gets into the question of how much it takes to fund that school versus the student body there. And so it actually takes more to fund Salcha and Two Rivers with less student population than it does to fund an in-town school. And so that's where a lot of that conversation comes into. Now the transportation thing, yeah, we are having some struggles with transportation, but we are in a spot where the transportation actually for out there won't change. Those buses that are dedicated for out there will still be those routes. They just transition to Anderson. And so we're very hopeful that we will be good with that. And again, those questions come on Monday, right? We get those answers at our work session this Monday. And so we will work through that. Now, when referencing the school closures with the bus drivers, that was very unfortunate. And yes, we are struggling. It's not just a Fairbanks problem. This is nationwide that districts are having issues with busing. And it's, a lot of our bus drivers live out in the hills and out in those outskirts of town. And while in town, yes, the roads were plowed and things looked good, those outskirts areas where these drivers are and stuff were not good. And there were a lot of stuck drivers in their driveways. The hills had a ton of snow that day. And so while town looked good, it wasn't the same story for just 2 miles outside of town.
Right. No. So, I mean, it is difficult, but I mean, again, when you're living on the ragged edge like that, where you have just enough drivers to get by and, missing a few causes the whole school. I mean, obviously there's some challenges there as well. Melissa Burnett is our guest. She's the president of the Fairbanks North Star Borough School Board, and we're talking about school closures. So, Melissa, if you were queen for a day, and well, we all know that you're the queen every day, right? But if you were queen for the day, what is the solution to all this? I mean, we've talked about you've been cutting, but we're still having a funding issue. We're still having this. We're still having that. We've got what is the solution in your mind? Having been on the school board for what, 5 years now?
3. This
Three,
is I'm in
years.
my 3rd year.
Third year. Okay, it feels like 5. I know sometimes that's, but what is in your mind? What is the solution for what we've got going on here? Because it's not just a funding, it's the enrollment, it's the thing, it's the the structural, the way that the budgets are built, and the fact that we've got all these buildings. And so, but what is the overall fix to the problem that we're facing right now? And it seems like every school district out there is facing.
Yeah, if I was queen for a day, I would fund the state of Alaska through and through and give it as much money as it needs so it could just give everybody everything all the time. But, we don't live in that perfect world, and I don't have
Okay, Marie Antoinette, everybody cake.
Let them eat cake.
Right. I mean, who, but again, how do we pay for that? I mean,
Yeah.
is it simply a money problem, or do we have an institutional kind of structural issue where we're like, oh, I mean, do we need to live more within our means? And or has there been a fundamental shift? And are we seeing that now? I mean, we were just talking about this massive enrollment drop that you guys had in 1 year. That was followed by, of course, the COVID time and the massive enrollment drop and homeschooling and people. Is there a paradigm shift? Are people moving more away from brick and mortar and starting to say, well, there are other alternatives? Is it time to take a look at maybe how the funding model is working, or what do you think?
I do think that we need to look at the funding model. I've actually been saying this for a couple years, sitting here on this board and seeing how the foundation formula works for districts. They're definitely that it needs to be busted open and looked at, and because there are factors in this that people aren't aware of that actually count against districts. So like closing schools or drops them in enrollment, we get counted against for certain things. And so when you look at it and people do the math, they're like, well, this is what you got. Well, it's actually, no, we have some things inside this formula that actually count against us, and so actually drop that funding. So I would like to see that opened up at some point and looked at. I don't know what the answer is to it. That's the big people there in Juneau, but I do feel it needs to be looked at. Funding is a very sensitive topic. Being more of a fiscally conservative person, I do favor the PFD. I do support the PFD. I do support low taxes. But there is a reckoning coming here. And so what is the answer? Is it a state sales tax to help offset this? Is it, I don't know what that looks like, but districts do need to, live within their means. It's like a household budget, right? Or a business budget. You've got to live within what you have. That's what we're doing. That's why you see this consolidation. That's why you see all these cuts. That's why when we do get to the budget here next month, you're going to see administration cuts. Even there downtown, you're going to see these things because that's where we are. We've got to do this. But also, and I know this is disgusting words for some of you, there's got to be something that moves inside that BSA. And it's not the answer, the end all be all, but districts do need something in there that will help get us out of this structural deficit. We've been having some meetings with legislators, and what we've been telling them is we've got to see something over that 680 that we did last year. Is it the 2000 that Toby is talking about? No, that's a huge number, and that impacts the state of Alaska, and we've got to be sensitive to that. But it's definitely more than the 680. And honestly, and for me, it's $1,000 into the BSA. And I know that's gross, but that would give us sustainability for the next 7 to 10 years. And we wouldn't be back at this. I know.
I mean, okay. I mean,
hear you.
And I understand. I'm not certain that using the BSA to increase school funding is the best mechanism. I'll be honest with you, for a couple different reasons. And I guess we can get into that here in the next segment. But for a couple different reasons, I don't think that, well, we'll talk about it. We're up against the break, so we'll come back to it. But I'm not convinced that is the best way to make it all happen. So we'll continue. Melissa Burnett is our guest. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Luke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Oh, push this button. Okay, I got to push this button. All right, we'll be back with more in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, make sure everything's going on. All right, it's all working. Okay, it's working. It's working. All right. I know. I'm paranoid. You know how it is. I get paranoid that it's because I can't hear it. Is it working?
I love that nice beard.
Nice beard. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's something you never hear. So it's all. I'm sure it's nice beard.
Yeah, exactly. I don't got that going on here.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think some people in the chat room, and I know that you see it, you said it, and you're like, in an ideal world, $1,000, $1,000 BSA increase.
Well, and I know that's gross, Michael. I get it. And I see Kevin McCabe, who's going to pay for it? And that's the same thing. We yesterday I talked with Kronk, right? Who's going to pay for that? How does that look like? I get it. I know. I also sit on the same side of the fiscally conservative, doing the right thing, not trying to give too much anywhere, making sure that we take care of what we need to take care of. I get it 100%. But I'm sitting here looking at this budget And for me to come and say that, it kills me. It really, truly does. But it's where Fairbanks is. We have consolidated 9 schools, so many positions, so many admin positions, like programs, SPED, ELP. I mean, we're to a point, our big quivers in our district are gone after this year.
Right.
You
Well,
know, we have pulled every single big quiver that we have.
I
I'm
guess,
in this.
yeah, no.
Every
Hey, I mean, Kevin makes the point. We put
Yeah.
$322 million into school funding last year, and that's not enough. I mean,
Yeah.
part of my problem here is that putting it into the form, and I guess I don't want to get into that till we come back because I don't want to repeat myself. But, at some point, and I understand, you've got the heart for the kids and for taking care of this. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on the school board, and you are on the fiscally conservative side of the fence. Maybe not as much as the people in the chat room would want you to be, but
Right.
you are, as far as when you look at a school board, you're, you're out on the right compared to most of the other folks there. But at some point, somebody has to say, we're spending more than most school districts in the country, right? I mean, we're up there in the top. We're at the bottom of the scholastic achievement. And some of it has to do with geography and the environment and everything, but not that much. So the question becomes, is this just, are we propping up a sinking ship is what and I guess that goes back to my question of, has there been a paradigm shift? Are we moving from this kind of brick and mortar school kind of idea to, should we be moving to a different concept, or should we be readdressing this idea of how we're doing business today? Should we be looking at, a different form of education rather than brick and mortar? Or should we be looking at different, maybe it shouldn't be a BSA. Maybe everything should be one-time funding. Maybe it should be, I don't know. I'm just looking at it going, we can't keep going on the way we've been going on. You just mentioned it. Again, years and years and years of deficit that you're fighting on it. And if the answer is just more money for fewer students, that's a doom loop. More money for fewer students doesn't fix the problem. It just means more money, and and somebody's got to pay for that, which drives more people out, which, again, that's that doom loop we talk about.
No, it is. No, absolutely. And to your question on if there's a paradigm shift, I wouldn't say that there's a paradigm shift, but I would say that more and more families are definitely finding that education is not cookie cutter. It's definitely not, like for me, my 3 children are homeschooled. People are really shocked to find that out when I put that information out there, but I've been very public with it. I don't hide that fact. My 3 children, all 3 of them go to Best. And my children range from senior, sophomore, and then a 6th grader. And for us, homeschool is because my oldest, he doesn't do well in a classroom setting with so many kids in there. He can't focus, he can't concentrate. And so homeschool's worked really well for him. My other 2 are type 1 diabetics and have medical needs. And, the reason I got into running for school board, was because, we lacked health aides or nurses and all that. And so there was just some things with their medical needs. And so they homeschool for that. And that brings me to my point of, it's no longer everybody goes to brick and mortar. Some kids are doing homeschool. Some kids are doing charters. Some are in private school. Families are finding it's this wide range of things, so is it a shift? Maybe.
Well, I mean, when you see when the increase in homeschooling is up into the 20 percentile,
Yeah.
and the decline in brick and mortar school in your area is 15% in 1 year, I would say, yeah, there is some kind of paradigm shift. Maybe we can't quantify it exactly, but there is some kind of paradigm shift going on. All right, let's continue on here. Melissa Burnett, our guest, The Michael Duke Show, one final segment, then David Boyle. Let's get to it.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
He's got a version of that where he says, "Not your dad." He's, "Ooh, I thought it was an Epstein thing there or something." Anyway. Oh, man. All right. Welcome back to the program, The Michael Duke Show. Melissa Burnett, our guest, the school board president for the Fairbanks North Star Borough. All right. So let me talk about how I don't think that I don't think that a BSA increase is the way to go here. For one reason, it doesn't guarantee that monies actually make it into the classroom. There's no guarantees. A lot of BSA money is consumed by things like overhead, administrative, fixed costs, things like that. There used to be a mandate that a good chunk of the BSA, something like 70% early on, when the BSA had first been formulated in the 90s, that 70% would make it to the classroom. And now, according to one of the last studies I saw, we're lucky if it even breaches 50%, making it actually into the classroom. And this is supposed to be base student allocation. And again, with all the formulas and the factors and all this other kind of stuff, it seems like it's voodoo economics, right? I mean, when somebody who's homeschooled gets 90% of the BSA, but when you actually do the math with all the multipliers, somebody who's in a brick and mortar school actually gets almost twice what a homeschooler gets. It's not 90%. It's like 100, and they get double. And so it's a lot of voodoo economics, and I think it's disingenuous to put it that way. Also, the reason that I don't want to see a BSA increase is because it locks it in perpetuity until somebody has the political chutzpah to break open the formula again and do it again, which is verboten, right? I mean, nobody wants to do it. Then we're locked in for the future. And regardless of what's going on, it will be X number of dollars per student. Once you set that formula amount, unless and we saw it's a big struggle, it's a big fight, it's a big, caterwauling going on. So if we set it in the BSA, we may not reset it for years, even if it's doing us fiscal harm, because it's such a big political, it's radioactive politically kind of thing. Melissa, what do you say?
It's you and I will never see eye to eye on the BSA thing. And, you and I have had many discussions around this. And, I do think that there does need to be something in the BSA. And I know that that's what sets me apart, from a lot of the fiscal conservatives, is that I do side with there needing to be something happening in the BSA. The one-time funding is not sustainable. The 680, it was great. Last year, we got the $680 per student, one-time funding. It helped. It was great. But here we are closing 5 schools. So no, it was not enough. And I can't speak for what happened in the past. What I can speak for is now. And I know that, I see a lot of the comments, mismanagement, this, that, the other thing. I hear you. Bottom line is, this is where we are. And I came into this knowing that we had this massive multi-million-dollar deficit, and we need to figure out how to make our district sustainable and how to still provide for those kids who are in our brick and mortars. Because yes, there is a shift. There is, people are moving into homeschool. People are going into correspondence and charters and, going to those smaller class sizes. And that's why I believe we need that money in the BSA, because, like I said, if we saw, let's say $1,000 put into it, and how do we pay for that? I get it. That would keep us, our class sizes low. I could get us to a point, our district could put us where our children are not going to see the effects of the consolidations, because we'll be able to keep that pupil to teacher ratio down, which means we could get to those sustainable class sizes like our charter schools have. People want to see those lower class sizes. They want to see it go to the classroom. We could do that. You want it in the classroom, that's where it goes. And that's what Fairbanks will do with it, if that were to happen. And you see the educational impacts when you lower those class sizes, and you see our students doing
Right.
that math, that reading, that writing that you want them to see.
Well, Jeannie in the chat room actually makes a very valid point. She says, you're not closing schools because you don't have enough money. The BSA won't help put more butts in the seats. You're not closing schools because you don't have enough money per se. This is an enrollment issue, right? I mean, this is when you've got, and Fairbanks is actually because you've already closed some schools and done some consolidation. You don't have the problem that Anchorage had, where they had buildings that were at less than 50% capacity. And so, and that's happening across the state. So this is not just a Fairbanks problem. This is a KPB, Matsu, Anchorage major school district problem. Is that this is not just a problem of, if you give me more money, we can fix this. You've got a loss of students, and so now we have to figure out how to make this work. You're not closing schools because of lack of money. You're closing schools because you have lack of students.
Yes, we are closing school because of lack of students, but it ties into funding. We're closing schools because of funding too. Even if we didn't see that 650 decrease in students and say it was only a couple hundred, we would still be in this situation due to our budget. No, money doesn't fix the problem. Throwing money at the problem doesn't fix it. I agree. But I also say not helping find a sustainable future for our districts is also something that doesn't help. We've got to find a way to help our districts be sustainable, but also have them be accountable to what they are doing with their budgets as well, which is why Fairbanks is doing what it's doing with, looking and realizing our enrollment's an issue. So we got to consolidate for that, but also realizing our budget is coming to a head. And so we also need to consolidate for that and reduce administration. I saw a comment about downtown. That's a huge one that keeps coming forward right now is, well, why don't you shut down downtown and move everybody to other buildings?
You're talking about the Borough School
ADC.
District Administrative Building on Fifth Avenue. For those of you who don't live in Fairbanks, the administrative building is a 4-story building on Fifth Avenue that has a lot of the school district admin in it. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So that's downtown on Fifth Avenue here in Fairbanks. And that's where our boardroom is. That's where all the administrators are. And if we were to take all those administrators and move them to other buildings, at the end of the day, the savings would only be around $220K to shut down that building. The money is in the administration. And that is going to be cut as well. We are only in the first steps of our budget. We did custodial, moving into schools. February 17th, we get the superintendent's budget before us, and that's where we're going to see more cuts to that administration. But if we cut all the admin, then we have nobody to run the district. So, I just wanted to address that real fast. There's no savings in shutting down downtown. The savings are in the staff, and the staff are being cut. So it's a very complicated thing. I get throwing money at the problem is not the correct answer, but
Right.
not helping districts find a sustainable path is not the answer as well. And yes, that begs the question, how do we pay for all this?
Well, and you're facing a problem that has been 25, 30 years in the making. I've often said this, and I feel like a grumpy old man when I say that. I know I look like a grumpy old man, but I'm really not that old. I'm only 55. But when I was a kid, there were at Lathrop High School, there were 38 teachers or something, and there was 3 staff in the office and a nurse, and I think there was 1 guidance counselor, right? So you had 35 teachers and you had 5 or 6 staff for 35 teachers. And today that number has totally changed. And so you're looking at a mission creep in administrative, because in some cases, and we know we talked to Sarah Montalbano on this, in some cases it's 2 and sometimes 3 administrators to 1 teacher. And so that's where I think we have to start looking at this. Ben Carpenter, who's in the chat room, says the BSA, it makes a good comment about the difference between the BSA and results, and says the BSA has no connection to results. BSA is an administrative tool to ensure funding predictability. Another example of why results-based budget is needed. And I agree with that. I mean, that you have to have results. And you have to have, the BSA has nothing to do with whether or not the kid is successful or not. It just means that you're going to get a certain amount of money. And I find this whole thing frustrating.
May
Go
I
ahead.
May I for a second? Yeah, actually,
yeah.
we talked about that with Kronk yesterday. The measurable accountability pieces, right? So how do you see improvement with the funding? And that is actually a great point. And I would love to sit down with Ben and several other legislators and actually figure that piece out. How do we show measurable impacts that are also tied to the funding that we're getting? And maybe that's a way we work through the funding situation. I don't disagree with that sentiment in any way, shape, or form. There does need to be some measurable things that come forward that we're seeing, like, okay, this is working, like the Alaska Reads Act right now. We can show that the Alaska Reads Act is working in our schools, and it's absolutely amazing. And I'm actually looking forward to going to Juneau here to talk with our legislators and show them that, like, look what you guys implemented and look at how it's working for Fairbanks and what we're doing with it. And so those pieces, we've got to figure that out. How do we tie this to the funding and make it work?
One final, we're down to less than a minute here. Any final thoughts here, Melissa, before I let you go? Thank you for coming on board, by the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate it. I know not all of us will always see eye to eye on the funding piece. I am working really hard to just make sure that our students feel the least of the brunt of this as possible. That's where my heart is. It's with our students and with our educators. And I just want to make sure that Fairbanks has what it needs to make sure our students survive. And at the end of the day, what that looks like is on the public. And so I just encourage everybody, get out there, talk to your legislators, talk to your assembly members, advocate.
Well, yeah, do what you can do. Melissa Burnett,
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on board. Thank you for what you do. And like I said, we may not agree, but we're always moving in the right direction. Thank you for coming on board, hon. I'll talk to you again soon, okay?
All right. See you guys.
Thanks so much. All right, folks, we got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense, Liberty-Based, Free Thinking Radio. Hour 2 dead ahead. Okay, let's see if David Boyle is hanging out with us now. Is he ready? Are you there? David, are you with us?
I'm here, Michael. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now. We had tried to talk to you earlier when Melissa was on, and you apparently stepped away from the thing there. So I just want to make sure you were.
Well, I actually had two applications on my computer that was hogging whatever the stream you're using, StreamYard. So I had to uninstall those applications just for you, Michael.
Oh, just for me. Well, hopefully you won't need them in the near future. So that's all we can do right now. All right. So you're ready to jump on board and get down with this?
Yes. Melissa did a great job, and I understand her position. I don't envy her. It's a difficult position to be in, but I think I'm not so sure she discussed contract negotiations and the cost of those as being one of the big factors, for education.
No,
funding.
she didn't. No, she didn't discuss those, but she, and like I said, she's trying to split the baby here. She's got a tough situation there where she's trying to adhere to fiscal conservancy, but at the conservativeness, but at the same time, she's got a heart for the kids and wants to see them succeed and yada, yada, yada. I mean, it's a tough situation for sure, but all right. Well,
I don't think
Dave,
they're diametrically opposed.
No, I would not disagree with that. All right. Hold the line, David. We'll be right back to you. I'm going to put you back in the green room for now until we're ready to, go. Okay. David is back into the room. Let's see what else. Let's see what you guys are saying here. I'm scrolling backwards. They consolidate the admin, and then the board gives they consolidate administration, and then the board gives central office 10 to 12% raises and $9,000 bonuses. The cost savings goes right back into their pocket, says Donna. I mean, That's not, again, Ben Carpenter saying, there is no connection. The BSA has no connection to results. It's just a tool to ensure funding predictability. And it's an example of why results-based budgeting is needed. I mean, I would agree with that. Barbara Haney, the borough assemblywoman in Fairbanks, says you still have not faced the big consolidation. That will be next. I mean, they had a 15% decline in a single year in enrollment. 15% in a single year. Do the math on that over a 3-year, 4-year curve if it remained close to the same. Tim asked the question, are schools just daycare? That feels like it sometimes, right? Barbara also said the funding isn't there because there are fewer students. I mean, she's not wrong. That's why we're having funding issues, is because, it's because there are fewer students. Kevin McCabe, Rep. Kevin McCabe says, drop the special needs multiplier to 5. What is it now, Kevin? Drop the special needs multiplier to 5 and drop the hold harmless clause completely, and an increase might be possible. But a completely transparent online checkbook is also a requirement. And he mentioned that earlier, something about each school needed to update their online checkbook. What is the current special needs multiplier, Kevin? And yes, the hold harmless needs to be completely dropped, because if you lose students, you shouldn't, there shouldn't be a buffer where there's a delay from when you lose students to when you gain them, because it either is a per student count funding thing or it's not. You can't be like, well, we'll get 75% of what we got last year, regardless of what happens. And then we'll get 50% of the year before. And then we'll get 20. You just can't. No. Yeah. It's a big damn mess, somebody said. All right. She answered that. With what goes on in public schools, says Michael, I blame administrations being bloated and not actually doing their jobs. I was in the school that had let their insurance lapse. I'm an advocate for homeschool. Protect your children from harm. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people are out there. Jeffries thanked Melissa, saying, thank you for stepping up. You have a thankless job and task. It's hard. I mean, again, it's hard to see all that. All right, let me get back down to the bottom of here. Oh yeah, I did not touch on the contracts. Good point, David, says Melissa. So we're going to talk about the contracts, but Melissa said she didn't even touch on those. We need true and honest data, says Kevin, without the emotion of the NEA and the AASBA and the ACSA, driven by red label buttons. An honest, data-driven conversation would help resolve this. I don't even know what the Alaska School Board Association, AASBA must be the Alaska something School Board Association, and the ACSA. Not sure what that. Anyway. All right, we're up against it. We got to go. We're going to be back. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah. Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska. This is your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. How are you? Welcome to Thursday. We're talking about schools and education. And joining us this morning to discuss that and more, we are talking with David Boyle, who is our friend of the show. He's our education advocate. He's also a senior contributor over at Must Read Alaska. He wrote an article here about 4 or 5 days ago talking about the BSA, the base student allocation formula, and its effect on the PFD. And specifically, the headline reads, "Bye-bye PFD, the schools need them." And I invited him to come on board and talk about this, especially since we just finished up with Melissa Burnett. And he has actually had several comments already about some of the things that Melissa said. And one of the things that we didn't get into that I'm sure we'll get into is the question of how do you get some of this stuff past union contracts and everything else, because that's a big factor when you're talking about schools is the union negotiations and everything else. And Melissa said, "Oh, that's something we didn't get into, but it's a good point." So we need to talk about the teachers' contracts and the union contracts and all that other kind of stuff. But without further ado, let's just jump into this and get into it with David Boyle, who joins us right now to discuss and talk about it. Good morning, David. How are you, my friend?
Hey, good morning, Michael. I'm doing fine for a senior citizen, and I think Melissa did an outstanding job. Like I said, I don't envy her in her position, and I'm just glad I'm not on the Anchorage School District School Board.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to that's a hard line to walk, I think, sometimes is what I'm saying in that. That's a hard line to walk. David, let's talk a little bit here about your article to begin with, and I guess maybe we should start off with what Melissa said was probably the more difficult thing when she said, "Well, I just would like to see $1,000 increase in the BSA." Walk us through what does that look like, and how does that solve the problem, or does it not in your mind? As you look at this, you've got all the math laid out here on what the increase is. For every $100 increase in the BSA, there's a $26 million increase in state funding. So does it actually solve our problem, or are we looking at this incorrectly?
Well, Michael, thank you very much for having me on. It doesn't really solve the problem. It kind of kicks the can down the road, and it also incentivizes bad behavior on the part of, let's say, the school districts. It keeps them spending and not really looking at where they can cut their local school district budgets. So it's not really a solution. And everyone in the education industry, including the Alaska Association of School Boards, supports this tremendous increase. And as you know, Senator Sen Tobin had an article in the Alaska Daily News, I guess it's called now, supporting over a 1,900 increase in the BSA. And that would be over a $500 million increase statewide. And she also criticizes people like me, I guess. She says, let me get a quote here. "I'm preparing for the inevitable deluge of misinformation about our state's public school system's purpose, role, and financial situation. And our schools are unfunded and under-resourced, and they are bending under the weight of an orchestrated attack on public education." I watch.
Really? I mean, it's
Really? I watch the legislator. legislature quite a bit, and I have actually on. I watch Senate Education, which Senator Tobin is the chair of, and I think they're going to push for at least $1,000. I think it's in the increase in the BSA. I do like the comments that both Representative Carpenter and Kevin McCabe make in changing the education formula.
Uh-oh, it looks like we did we lose you there for a second, David? Are you still with us? David's on the interwebs. He may have burped out there. All right, we'll see if we can get David Boyle back here in just a second. See if he can reconnect. He was just welcome to the wonderful world of the internet. Oh, there we go. Nope, I thought that was David. It's definitely not David. It's somebody else. So we're going to continue on with that here in just a second. Let's see if we can get David back on the program. David, can you hear us right now? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to disconnect David, and David, if you want to try and reconnect here, we'll get you back on the program. And we'll see if we can get him back into the challenge, or into the discussion here on the challenge. Yeah, I mean, Representative Carpenter makes the comment, Representative McCabe makes the comment that, he said, we need true and honest data without the emotion of the NEA, the AASBA, which is the Alaska Association of School Boards, I guess, and the ACSA, driven by red lapel buttons, which is, again, when they all stand up in a room and they chant and they all have red shirts on, and it's the public peer pressure, right? This is the peer pressure campaign. We need honest data without and I guess what I would say is that we need honest data without the emotion. This is the same problem that we were talking about earlier, about the emotion of these, for example, school closures. Well, if a school is only at 50% capacity and you've got 2 or 3 schools at only 50% capacity and you need to consolidate, yes, you can consolidate. If you got 3 schools at 50% capacity, you could have 2 schools at 75% capacity and save money by closing one of the schools. That makes sense. Oh, but we couldn't do that with school and my kids and no, I don't think it's your kids. Kids are ultimately flexible and malleable. Like I said, I remember in the 2nd grade, maybe 3rd grade, 2nd or 3rd grade, moving from Joy to Barnett. And it was not a big deal. It was not a big deal. I think we got a lot of projection going on here. Fragility that my kids are so upset. No, I think you're upset because, again, it bought a house in the district, or it did whatever here. But it didn't work out. Hello, Dave. Hey, David, are you with us?
Yes, Michael, it's me.
Okay. All right. Hold the line here for just a second here. I'm going to get David connected to the system here, and we're going to jump into this here real quick, and we will see if we can get him on board, back on board. But again, this fragility or this emotional tie to this thing is part of the problem. We need honest data without the emotion, without the people marching in the halls and shouting and being upset about it. David, what say you on those comments? Oh, all right. Hold the line for a second here, David. Wow, technical details today. It is just a day. Let me get this right now. David, hold the line. I'm going to ring you right back at this number because I have to connect it back. So I'll ring you right back at this number, and we'll get this going on. Appreciate your patience, folks. Here, sometimes life gets in the way, right? We're gonna make all this happen and get David Boyle back on the line right now. There we go.
This is David.
There you go, David. Sorry about that. I apologize.
Oh,
Okay.
no problem.
So again, you were saying that, Representative McCabe and Representative Carpenter were both making valid points about, the BSA is not a results driven thing. It's basically just a stabilizer to make you sure you have consistent funding, but that we need honest and true data. And I was just saying we need to take the emotion out of this. So what say you?
Yeah, the intensive needs factor is now 13 times the BSA, and the special education special needs factor is 1.2 times the BSA. So by the time you run it through this formula, it's, they say we're only going to increase the BSA, let's say by $1,000. And the message to most people received is that, well, it's only going up $1,000. But when you run it through that formula, that $1,000 becomes $257 million at the other end. So those students are multiplied considerably. It's a compounding factor like compound interest. It's not just a simple number. And that's the message I believe the people the education industry folks are trying to push, and certain legislators like, let's say, Senator Tobin. So it's not a fun formula to look at. I do think it needs to be revised. The BSA may need to be increased. However, we need to look at results. I find it very interesting when a school district loses students. It's very easy, or when it gains students, considerable number, it's very easy to increase their budget and build new schools by floating a bond. But on the other hand, when they start losing students, they find it just terribly difficult to be able to even reduce 5% of their budget. Well, that's not even close to what they want to reduce. But, for example, the Anchorage School District, according to the superintendent of the Anchorage School District, since 2010, the enrollment in the Anchorage School District has decreased by 6,453 students. That's a decline of 13%. It's out-migration and mostly, I think, the lower birth rate. And we all know how you solve that one, I guess, but I don't know how you solve the out-migration. You solve the out-migration by providing a better school system. There aren't any companies from outside there that are going to relocate to Alaska based on their school system, particularly in Anchorage. Now, maybe the Mat-Su, and I understand Fairbanks is having some problems as well, but it's a difficult problem. When trying to close a school, for example, one of the schools that's going to be closed is Lake Hood. And we had parents emotionally attached to Lake Hood. They've gone to school there. Their kids are there now. It's a wonderful school. It's got a 33% student fill rate. So 2/3 of the school is empty. And right now, Ruka Charter School, which has nearly 500 students, it's a German charter school in Anchorage. They want to use the Lake Hood Elementary School for their school, and it would be a very good fit. And hopefully that occurs. So, the emotional attachment to schools. I'm not aware of any of these parents stating how well their kids are doing regarding the Alaska Star test results in English language arts and math. And I'm not so sure many of the students that or parents are emotionally attached to these proposed school closures, which is now down to 2 from 7 to 2.
Right.
I'm not so sure those parents really know. And, information is power, and that's what the school district has.
Right. David Boyle is our guest, senior contributor for Must Read Alaska, also education advocate, friend of the show, been with us a lot here. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will continue with him here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with David Boyle and more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now with David Boyle. and I definitely want to get to this discussion about how the labor contracts are going to be involved in this. But this push, I mean, Dave, do you think this is a legitimate push for this $1,923 or $1,963 BSA? Do you think this is a legitimate push, or is it one of those selling gimmicks where they try and go for the moon and in hopes of getting halfway? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I actually think that may pass in the state Senate, because of their strong majority of, let's call them liberals, I guess. We only have five or six, can't remember, in the conservative minority, but I think it might pass in the Senate, and they'll toss it over to the House, and the House will take it. And I don't know. I listened to Representative Ruffridge yesterday, and he wants an increase in the BSA. I can't remember how much he said, but I think the BSA will increase, and it will be permanently ensconced in that foundation formula for eternity for the most part. Although, we can change the formula at any time, just like we change the PFD at any time, because it's an appropriation for the Alaska Supreme Court. One of the big pushes here for the increase in the BSA and any K-12 funding is it's due to the contracts that the school districts negotiate with the various unions. Now, I'll tell you what's really surprising to me. The NEA, AEA in Anchorage School District, their ingoing position, their contract expires into this school year. Their ingoing position is they want a 15% increase in salaries across the board. 15 for 1 year. Now, the going in position by the Anchorage School District for that same contract is they want about a $2,000 pay increase across the board for everybody, which that would be like close to 4% pay increase. But 15%, we know that's their starting point. It'll probably go down. The other interesting, which, health insurance is a tremendous burden on all the school districts. In Anchorage right now, the school district pays $22,000 a year per union member for health insurance. And the member pays a small portion, maybe about $1,200 a month. The going in position of the teachers union in Anchorage, I wrote it down here. Hold on a minute. They want to raise it considerably. They want to raise it to $25,200 a year from $22,000, what the taxpayers or the state of Alaska would be paying. So my way of thinking about union contracts for school districts is the union asks for certain increases in their wages and salaries. The school district says they increase them and they negotiate, but pretty much give them what they want. Then they go to the legislature and say, hey, we just negotiated this contract. Now you need to fund it. I think maybe the state needs to be, the Department of Education needs to be at the bargaining table when these contracts are quote, negotiated.
Right. Yeah.
And think about that. That's like me wanting to remodeling my house and asking my neighbor to pay for it.
Yeah, no, exactly.
You don't
or going to the bank after the fact. After you did it, and then you go to the bank and say, can I get a loan to remodel my house? I just did it.
Yeah,
right?
But the bank probably would say, not no, but hell no.
Yeah, exactly. But the state's like, okay, well, I guess we got to do it since you already did it. I mean, kind of thing. I mean, that's where we're at right now.
And there's another unintended consequence.
Well, hold on. We'll get into that here when we return to the radio here.
Okay.
We got one more segment, or we're in the middle of one commercial break here. David Boyle is our guest. We're going to continue here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube things and Facebook things. Share it with everybody. Let's get to it. Here we go. 4 seconds. 3, 2.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Okay. Got to push the button before you start talking. It's amazing how I run this thing. David Boyle is our guest, education advocate and senior contributor for Must Read Alaska. We're talking about his article that was in Must Read here a few days ago that read, "Bye-bye PFD, the schools need them." And we were talking with Melissa Burnett earlier, and I said one of my problems with the BSA is that there's no guarantee that this money is actually going to make it into the classroom. And in fact, what we're seeing is that usually barely 50% of it makes it into the classroom. A lot of it gets consumed by overhead. And of course, one of the big things that we're talking about is administrative costs. And that brought David to start talking about the union contracts and things like that that are up for review. And we're not getting small asks on the union contracts. I don't know about most of you folks out there, but I don't remember, when was the last time any of you got a yearly raise, or do you all get a yearly raise every year? The union contracts have got some stuff baked in that Dave was just talking about. David, tell us a little bit about how the union contracts are going to be affected, either affect the BSA or be affected by the BSA.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Well, the teachers union, the Anchorage Teachers Union, called the AEA, their contract expires with the school district at the end of this school year, and they have their going in position is asking for a 15% salary increase across the board. That's ungodly. I don't know if any of your listeners have got a 15% pay increase in the last year. And the other part of that, as you know, health insurance is a tremendous cost factor to school districts. It's well over $100 million for the Anchorage School District every year. The going in position of the teachers union in Anchorage, right now, it costs $2,100 a month for the school district. I'm not sure what the employee pays, not much, very little. They want to increase that, which would be, they want to increase it to now it's $22,000 a year for health insurance for a teacher union member in Anchorage. They want to increase that to $25,000 plus, an increase of 4,200, or increase. It goes from 22,000 to 25,000 plus. That's unsustainable. And you might say it goes into the classroom, but I mean, my goodness, they got like 2,600 union members in the Anchorage Teachers Union at $25,000 a year. I haven't figured that out, but it's unbelievable. And I don't know if any of your listeners, if their health insurance premiums cost $25,000 a year. Now, Representative Sarah Vance from Homer area, she had a bill a couple of years ago requiring the school districts to be put on the state's Alaska Cares health insurance program. And back then, Senator Mike Dunleavy had the same bill. Both of those bills got very little traction. Senator Dunleavy's a few years ago got traction from 4 of the 5 big school districts because they saw that this is unsustainable in the future. And the only one that opposed it was the big elephant in the room, the Anchorage School District.
Right.
So what happens, what I see happening in these union contracts that the school districts, quote, negotiate, end quote, is that they go to the bargaining table. They give pretty much the unions what they want because they're threatened for a walkout/strike. The school board approves the contracts. They don't have the money to pay for them. And then they go to the legislature and say, okay, we've got this contract. We can't pay for it. We're going to have to give pink slips to all these teachers, the old pink slip merry-go-round every spring that happens. And the legislature says, oh gosh, we'll do it. And so they're going to increase the BSA to help pay for these increased union contracts. But my way of thinking is maybe the State Department of Education should be at the bargaining table when these contracts are negotiated, because they're having to pay for it.
Yeah, no, maybe they should be in the room when you start talking about, we're going to give you get a chicken and you get a chicken. And somebody's like, well, wait a second. Maybe the people who are actually paying the bill should be here before we start saying what everybody's getting, right?
Right. And you know, and getting back to the foundation formula that funds K-12 education in Alaska, one of the big problems with that formula is, let's say you have money that's goes to special needs, 1.2%. That 0.2%, that doesn't even is earmarked or targeted for those particular children. Neither is the intensive needs money. It just goes into a big bucket that goes to the school districts, and they can do what they want with it. You know, just like the Anchorage school district.
Wait a second. So you're saying if they've got 5 regular students and 1 special needs student, and even though the special needs students gets to count it counts as a multiple of a regular student, the money's not necessarily earmarked. It all still just goes into one bucket, and then they get to decide how to spend it after all?
Yes, that's what I understand. Now, if there's something contrary to that, maybe Representative McCabe and Carpenter can put it in the chat room, but that's what I understand. It's basically goes into the general fund. And so that particular special ed student or intensive needs student doesn't get the resources that they were supposed to.
Well, they're not guaranteed the resources. That means the resources may have gotten to the district, but is it guaranteed that it goes to them in their classroom in their need? That's the question.
That's right. And another issue is, now transportation funding is a separate funding entity outside of the foundation formula. And right now it's set at $491 per student. Senator Tobin wants to increase that to $805 per student. But you have to understand that the school districts don't transport every student, even though they get funding on that. In Anchorage, they have 42,000 plus students. They only transport about 15,000 of those students. They don't even transport the charter school students, which they could if they wanted to, but they don't want to. So under Senator Tobin's transportation funding increase, that would be about, in Anchorage, they would use about $2,000 to transport a student in a school year. And it would increase the state's budget, over $100 million. That's outside the BSA again. So, you know, in the older days, let's say, I think it was prior to 2003, school districts were funded by the numbers of students they actually transported. Every month they had to send in a list of the students that they transported, and that's what the state funded them. Now it's just another, let's just say, bucket of money that goes to them, and they can actually do what they want with it.
Right, exactly, because now they just count the number of students in the classroom daily for the BSA count, and then the transportation count is a separate pot of money that they get paid on in a separate line. I mean, yeah, $100 million in simple, just in transportation costs. And that doesn't even count the fact that they're not even transporting all the students. It's not an actual cost. It's just a per head count, right? Because they're not even transporting half the students.
Right. And you know, here's another interesting anomaly that happened. You know, as you said earlier, the school districts get 9/10 or 90% of the funding of a regular student, not funding, but a correspondence/homeschool student only counts 90% of what a full student counts in the neighborhood schools in the school district. So when Anchorage changed the family partnership charter school to a correspondence school, the Anchorage school district lost funding because that charter school student at value of 1 or whatever for the BSA would have gone through the foundation formula and ended up with around $8,000, I think,
right,
for an Anchorage school. But now that it's now now that it's a correspondence school, homeschool, they get less money. They only get 90% of the BSA, which is $5,600. They don't get these $8,000 plus. I'm not so sure they saw that unintended consequence coming.
Well, again, that's that when the formula gets so complicated and so complex, you have to have an abacus, a slide rule, and a supercomputer to be able to figure it out. That's when you have some issues.
I have two of the three.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of the problem. All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, and there was an effort in the last session, I think in SB 140, Senate Bill 140, to actually increase the funding for a homeschool / correspondence school student too. I think it was the value of one, but those students are doing pretty well. Let's incentivize that and increase the funding to 1.2, just like a special ed student. And that would bring more equity to the foundation formula. And as we know, it's all about equity.
Well, it's supposed to be about equity unless it's something that's disfavored, like homeschooling, charter schooling, disfavored by the establishment, not by the public, not by the parents, but by the establishment inside of the educational industry. If it's disfavored, then it's not about equity. It's not about things being equal. It's about, and I think that's a big part of the problem here. I asked the question of Melissa, and I'll ask it of you. Do you think the paradigm has shifted? Do you think that do you think we're in the middle of like a sea change here where parents are like deciding that maybe the same old brick and mortar school, the idea of sending them there and doing things the way that they've been done do you think people are starting to make a change? And do you think that the school system is flexible enough to adapt to that change?
I think there is a sea change, and the best thing that came out of the COVID-19 quote pandemic was the fact that parents finally saw what their children were being taught in school by looking over their shoulders at the computer, and they also saw what their kids were not being taught by no education going on. Just let's call it computer time / seat time. So that was maybe that's the best thing to ever come out of COVID, and maybe. I don't know. I don't like the COVID pandemic, but maybe that was necessary to change K-12 education throughout the nation.
Yeah, no, I often said that was the one silver lining to COVID was that it opened people's eyes to what the education, what the education establishment was doing in America.
Right. And a lot of parents pull their kids out of the brick and mortar schools. One of the reasons because of, the DEI and the critical race theory, quote, I won't say it's being taught, but it's ingrained in the institution itself, and it's ingrained into some of the teachers as well. So it's not taught as a course, which I always get, hit on, but on Facebook, but it's ingrained in some of the studies. And so, interestingly enough, if the schools, districts, and schools would look at themselves as more of a business and try to attract customers rather than push them away like they're doing, we'd have a much better program. And let the teachers teach. I mean, they need to.
Right.
That's a prime interest. But for example, my grandson is in New Mexico. They're stationed at the Air Force in New Mexico, and he's in a homeschool program now online. Excelis is the name of it, and he loves it. He's doing great. He spends 2 to 3 hours a day in his online learning, and it's like he has a teacher there, just like you're in the video here.
Right.
It's like he has a teacher online that helps correct him, and they have a dashboard there to tell the parent. It's actually, I don't know. It's just more communication back and forth than you have with a regular brick and mortar school.
Right.
Much better. I think it's going to change, and because of that, I think we're going to see some big pushback in the state of Alaska by the education industry and the teachers unions.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting to watch. Just like the Supreme Court case on the correspondence schools that can't remember the guy that Governor Walker's former chief of staff brought.
Oh, Drake
Remember his
Clarkson.
No.
No. I know which one you're
Starts
talking
with an
about.
S.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
which one you're talking about there. All right, well,
Wait.
hold the line for just a second here. David Boyle is our guest. One final segment is dead ahead. We're going to continue talking about education. So what is the major solution? So again, we asked Melissa. She said more money to the BSA. And David's laid out some different like pieces and parts here, but maybe we can get a concrete solution from him. Like if you were, you had the magic wand and could wave it, what would it be? David Boyle, our guest, senior contributor for Must Read and Education Advocate. We're going to return right after this.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend.
Okay. Hello, my friends. Hello. All right. Let's making sure all that's working right. Okay, it's all working right. David Boyle is our guest. David, couple comments from the chat room. Anthony said, so the reality that became apparent during COVID was that the brick and mortar education system is an entirely vestigial apparatus in a world of online learning. You can get a college degree off your laptop in a Starbucks, but for some reason we have to hemorrhage money to maintain buildings and infrastructure for buildings operating at 30% capacity doesn't pass the sniff test anymore. And I think Anthony's 100% right, David.
I love that analogy. I think it's wonderful, but even though I can't stand Starbucks coffee.
Right. No, but I mean, he's making a valid point. I mean, there are people in India that were taking, some of those online, some of the like New Delhi College and stuff, they're doing online. You got Khan Academy, you got all this stuff. You got people who are out there who are intelligent, who are, being able to do this online stuff. Why does it have to be a brick and mortar? You got to have it 3 hots and a cot. You got to come in here, conform. Why are we stuck in this rut on this?
Well, I think one of the answers is we've always done it that way before.
Okay.
And I don't like the other one is the power,
yeah,
the power and control of the teachers unions. I mean, they have everything to lose. I mean, and they can't lose that. They will not lose that power. Dr. Jill's gone, so maybe we don't have to worry. I just saw a thing article this morning on the U.S. Department of Education.
Right.
How much was their budget was like $271 million. And they have 4,200 employees.
Okay.
So, I thought, oh my God. Of course, I don't think they'll ever do away with the Department of Education, but I would marginalize it and take the people and put them somewhere, whatever with them, and maybe leave half a dozen people there in the DOE.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, good luck. I mean, we would love to see the Department of Education be dismantled, quite honestly, the federal Department of Education, but I don't know if there's the horsepower to make that happen for sure.
Hey, Michael, I saw something on the State's Department webpage yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Since fiscal year 06, with no change in the BSA, the changes in the adjustment factors would have increased K-12 funding by 34%.
So with no change in the BSA, what you're saying is leaving the BSA out of it, we still had a 34% increase in education?
Yes. They increased the intensive needs factor, I think, from 5 to 11 to 13. They put in the CTE career tech thing in there. I think it's 0.2. So yeah, they've added factors and they've increased the factor. So it's at 34% since 2000 fiscal year 2006.
34% since 2006, but they keep telling us, David, that it's flat funding. They've said it repeatedly. It's flat funding, David.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But I will send you that.
Yeah, send that over to me. I'd like to read that. I'd like to take a look at that. Send it to my email. That's fine. Cindy asks, Dave, can you please explain how federal funding is tied to our budget? So I guess that would be to the school district budget. And then, of course, there's another component there about local contribution, that it can only be up to a certain amount, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have, I don't remember the mechanism by which the federal funding is tied to that, but David?
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. The federal, there's Title I, there's Title VII, there's Title IX. There's like 4 different buckets of federal money that come into the state. They don't go directly to the districts. And then the state disperses them based on, quote, their student population. I had something on that. Gosh, hold on. I'll have to look. Nope, don't have it there. Not there. I got it. Here it is. Title I is money that goes to actually goes to low income schools, and right now about every school in the state is a low income school, because if you have, I think it's 40% or more of the student population is low income, then the entire school is considered to be low income.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're getting money out of that. We'll have to come back to this. We're 20 seconds out from rejoining. So I guess we could pick this back up. Let's pick it back up here as soon as we return. Hold the line for a second, David. I'm put you on hold. We'll be right back to you here. We are about to jump out of it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Let's go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay, we're finishing up here with David Boyle, education advocate and senior contributor for Must Read Alaska. Cindy asks in the chat room, can you please explain how federal funding is tied to the budget? And David pulled into his archive there and has got some documents up talking about this, specifically about Title I schools and how money's funded and everything else. So, David, tell us about this. Every school, Title I monies go to schools that are low-income schools. But as it turns out, apparently in Alaska, every school is a low-income school. So give us the rundown here.
In fiscal year 23, the federal government funded the Alaska's school K-12 system with almost $135 million a year. And so, and what they do is they say you need to follow these rules. They put out the regulations and they say you need to follow these or we're going to pull back. Some of the money goes to the school lunch program. I can't remember right now how much that is. I'm looking this up and hold on. And some of it goes to Title IX is what, protection of girls' sports, in which has been a huge, a tremendous discussion lately. Then there's Title 3 or 4 that has to do with Alaska Native education and American Indian education. So there's a tremendous amount of money that comes from the federal government to Alaska's K-12 system. And like I said, it's almost $135 million back in fiscal year 23. That goes to the Department of Education Early Development in the state, and they dole that out to the various school districts depending on what their population is in those various programs. And in Title I, which is, everybody loves to be a Title I school because they get more money from the state,
right,
from the federal government through the state.
Right.
And that's about all I can say about it at this point.
Okay. Well,
it's one of the things though, then they have their hooks into the schools,
the
federal government, and they can kind of dictate what you can and cannot do.
Yeah. There's always a all that federal money always has a hook on it somewhere. Like, you'll take it,
Yes.
but the first taste is free, and everything else is we've got you by the short and curly. So yeah. David,
Yes, like a
the question that I asked Melissa was, again, if she was queen for a day, how would she fix the current problems in education? And her answer was, well, I'd just give $1,000 increase to the BSA, and that would fix most of it. I think that that's problematic personally, especially putting it in the BSA component. But if I made you king for a day or emperor or gave you the magic wand or however you want to do it, what would be the answer to fixing what's wrong with our education system right now as we look at it today? What's David Boyle's solution to this problem?
Well, I would prefer universal school choice, but having watched Alaska's education problems and system since 2008, I honestly believe Alaska will be the last state for that to occur. So we need to transition, let's say, to some of that and allow parents to choose the best education fit for their kid. We need more charter schools. There was a law or a bill in the previous legislature, sorry, and it allowed the state Department of Board of Education to authorize charter schools, and it also allowed local municipalities and boroughs to charter or authorize start new charter schools. Of course, the education industry was dead set against that, and that never happened, unfortunately. We can get that out from under the control of the local school boards and districts. That way, we'll have many more charter schools. We need to fully fund the homeschool program. You know, a homeschool student gets 90% of the BSA, which is about $5,600. They enroll in a program like Raven or IDEA. Those state programs, correspondence programs, take about half of that $5,600 or more, and some of them take less. And the parent gets the rest to figure out what programs they want to get for their kids, what tutorial material, gym classes, et cetera, et cetera. Those are good programs. Let's increase that factor for correspondence students to 1.2 at least. Let's require the school districts to report on, let's target or fence or earmark the money we send for transportation, for actual students they transport, and same with special ed money. Do away with the whole harmless provision. We don't need to pay school districts for losing students. We need to pay them for gaining students.
Well, so what people understand what the hold harmless provision is, and this is especially relevant in the realm of declining enrollment, is that there's a hold harmless provision that says if a district had 1,000 students last year and they drop down to 900 students this year, they get 75% of it's 75, 50, and 25 over a 3-year decline. They're guaranteed to get at least 75% of the monies that they got the year before in year one, 50% in year two, 25%. But it basically prevents them, if they have a huge decline, it prevents them from having to try and adjust their budget in a given year. And that's a problem.
Yeah, exactly right. So, and in theory, Michael, if you take that to the extreme, you could lose all your students and still get 75% of your state funding. And that's maybe not a bad idea. and then when you lose them, the next year or 2 years, you start gaining them back. So then you get your money back. So I don't know why they put that. Well, the education industry got that put into law, the whole harmless provision, in order so the school district should transition and gradually reduce their, let's say, overhead.
Right.
But the best thing is school choice. Let the parent backpack the money
let the parent decide. You
bet.
Well, and I think, again, that goes back to my question of whether or not there's a paradigm shift. I think there is. I think people are seeing it. Yeah. The silver lining that was COVID showed people that the education industry was not doing a bang up job with their kids. I mean, that in a lot of ways, they felt like, I had tons of people come to me, email me during the early part and mid part of the pandemic where they said, I can't believe it. we started homeschooling our kids because the schools were closed and everything. And what a great thing it was, and how happy my kids were, and how they graduated early and they got done in, my son got done, in 2 or 3 hours a day. And then he had the rest of the day to focus on things that he was interested in. And, and just all these things. And people were it was mind bending how much people's eyes were opened over something like that.
As I said earlier, Michael, information is power. A few years ago, I stood outside of 3 schools when No Child Left Behind was in play. And that's when, if a school had failed to achieve its whatever, it was a failure for 3 years in a row, you could get your child out of that school to a better neighborhood school and get free transportation. I talked to 21 parents. 17 of those parents removed their children from those neighborhood schools and got them into a better neighborhood school. And that's kind of like school choice too. I'd like to see them post the scores of the Alaska Star scores for those all the schools in all the districts out on their marquees or wherever they have there. Post them out there. Here's our scores: English language arts, math, and science, and let the parents see it. Once they see it, I think they'll become much more involved in their kids' education.
Yeah, they got to advertise. It's like warning labels on the outside of the can, may cause cancer.
Yeah.
This one's like, we got an F in math and reading, but we've got an A and, whatever. So you feel free to, no, man, put a label on the outside of the school to say, this is what our ratings are in each one of these subjects. And then let the parents decide. That would be, wow, that would be
Michael.
That would be madness.
Exactly what happened. That's exactly what happens in the state of Florida.
Yeah. Yeah.
They give instead of number grades, the state law, they give them letter grades, A through F.
Yeah.
Reading, language arts, and science. And guess what? Wow, the parents see that. Even though it's a beautiful school like some of the ones we have in Anchorage, they realize there's not a lot of education going on in there.
No. And that's what you need. That's what you need to make those decisions. David Boyle is our guest. David, hold the line for just a second. I'll give you a final bite at the apple. Folks, we're out of time for today. Tomorrow's Firearms Friday. Willie Waffle, Chris Chang, I believe, and I'm working on David Codrea. We'll see if we can get him on the program. Been a while for him. We'll be back tomorrow. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show. Okay. David, final bite at the apple here. Any final thoughts before we let you go, my friend?
No, not really. I just, it's very difficult to pay attention to what happens in the legislature. We only know what we hear and see.
Yep.
We don't know what happens, of course, behind closed doors between particular legislators.
Right.
But I, for one, I would encourage people to pay attention if they want their PFDs, to pay attention to both Senate and Senate Education Finance and House Education Finance. That's where the rubber's going to meet the road. And we need to improve K-12 education for every student in Alaska, not just for some.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on board. Is this phone number? It's not showing up as you're showing up as a different contact in my phone. Is this your phone number, or you want to email me?
Yes.
Yeah. This is it.
That's my. Yeah, 444-4970.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure that this is. I had somebody else's name on your contact here because I was like, I thought I had your phone number. All right, so let me just make sure that I changed that there, and I'll get you back. We'll get you back on the program here sometime in the near future, as I'm sure that this coming year is going to be probably. You're going to be watching with popcorn and sugar daddies on the side of the road, right? I mean, watching this go on. So
that and spam.
Yeah, that and spam. All right. Well, thank you, David. Appreciate you coming on board. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Right.
I'll send you a link to that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, folks, we got to go. I got things to do, people to see. Or the other way around. No. Be kind, love one another, live well. Don't forget to check out the Common Sense Corps, and we will we will return tomorrow with Firearms Friday. So excited about it. We'll see you then, folks. Have a good day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.